Welcome to my new map guide, and this time we have a look at abandoned factory domination. Please also consider the information in the comments section of my video. For the detailed charts you can also join my Discord server, because I will post them there. This map is a rather small and fast map. Normally all of the action is around the capture point A. The reason for this is that the capture point provides different ways to attack it. It is a higher ground, and of course once a team has full control over it, you can spawn camp the enemy. As always, a friendly reminder, please don't spawn camp. Let's start with this capture point from the west side and the spawn point that is closer to the capture point A. I marked the positions where you should watch out for enemies with the eye symbol, and the spot where enemies may have a line of fire at you with the exclamation mark. When I have a down tier match and some armor to use, I take my brawl route and move immediately to my first key position that is actually just before the capture point. Slower heavy tanks should have an eye to their left side doing so. Some fast enemies might already be at this position ready to shoot at you. In countless matches I tried different spots around this capture point to go to, and in every other spot there was an open flank and I got destroyed. This is why I recommend this position as your first key position for the brawl route. The moment your support teammates are at their key position or beyond it and the area in front of you is cleared, push the capture point. This is your second key position. Make sure to use the buildings around you as solid cover. In addition, you need the support to have control over this area so that you can focus on the enemy in front of you. You also want to check the minimap and listen for sounds to your left. There might be some enemies at the position I highlighted with the exclamation mark. Once they see the point is going to be captured, they most likely try to push it from here. Keep in mind, for the second key position your supports have to be in position. Otherwise the enemy has the chance to push you from multiple directions. The third key position is already the position from which you have the control over one of the enemy's spawn points. You want to consider that a team can get to this position within the first push. Imagine a team that focuses completely on the capture point A at the beginning of a match and thus completely eliminates one of the two enemy spawns. So in order to win this map, you have to go to this position, otherwise the enemy will do it. This is why the capture point A is so popular and crucial for the outcome of the match. Use the buildings to cover your weaker side armor, and check the area behind you or to your left for remaining enemies. You can also drop down to B and help your team to capture and defend it. It depends on how your team is doing around that capture point and how many other players defend the capture point A. You don't want to lose the capture point A once you have it. Remember, you only need 2 capture points to win the match. So C is not necessary, but if you have the time and your team is doing well, you can also try to get this capture point. In addition, also be aware of this position I highlighted with the exclamation mark. There might be some enemies. However, when it is still early in the match, I cannot recommend to cross the line I highlighted on the map. Abandoned factory is very winding, and the enemy can attack from different angles. Most of the time you are on your own when you push beyond this line, and at some point you get scouted and destroyed by the enemy, no matter how well you hide your vehicle. Now let's have a look at the support routes from this side. I like to distinguish between a support route with some armor and one for vehicles that actually have no armor. Don't get me wrong, you can also use the squishy tanks for the armored support route. I just had better matches with armored support tanks on this route. But for now let's focus on the buish support route. When your vehicle has absolutely no armor, support your teammates that brawl at the capture point A. Your first key position is before that building. You can use it as solid cover and have an eye on 2 crucial positions. Destroy the concrete wall and stop enemies from rushing to this position. Doing so you help your heavy armored teammates to get to their first key position. Once your teammates are before the capture point, focus on that little passage between the buildings in front of you. Move inside that building and either scout or shoot on the enemies that want to push here. Also have an eye to your left side. When no one of your teammates is on the first key position of the brawl route, you have to be more careful and check what the enemy is doing before you attack them. The building provides cover. Check the minimap from time to time and see if the enemy is already beyond B. This first key position is very important, since you help your heavy armored tanks to get to the capture point and to capture it. The second key position for this support route is a bit tricky. When your teammates have captured A or are in the process move towards that little passage you defended earlier, you have to check for enemies to your left and also to your front behind the bushes. You also have some bushes and other stuff as cover at this position, but you still want to be careful. Only attack enemies if it is safe to do so. Keep in mind that just around the corner there is a key position of the enemy. I will show you this position later in this video. Check the minimap which team has control over B. If the enemy has occupied it, you also want to have an eye on the capture point B before you move to your third key position. When your teammates on the brawl route are on the way to their third key position, and your team has the control over B, it is time to move onwards. However, here is a key position of the enemy, and you can only move onwards when it is clear. Your teammates from B have to help you, or you have to destroy the gun of the enemy to push him. Unfortunately, you have to cross a line of fire to get to your third key position on this route, so you want to check if it is really safe to do so. The third key position for this support route is in the buildings after the capture point A. From here you can have an eye on the enemies that try to push A, or on the enemies before the capture point B. When your team is in control over A and you have enough players around that capture point, you can also drop down to B and move onwards to C. In addition, also be aware of this position I highlighted with the exclamation mark, and do not cross the highlighted line until it is really late in the match. Now let's have a look at one of the most underrated support routes. I get why players like to fight around the capture point A and that it is important. But the capture point C is so unpopular that in some matches you can capture it without even encountering any enemy. When you have an up tier match and you want to play your heavy tank or you have a medium tank, pick this support route and move immediately to the capture point C, that is your first key position. There is a small gap where you can check if the enemy is also trying to do so. Just peek through the box wagons and see if you can detect an enemy, but don't waste too much time doing so. Capture the point and fight enemies that might appear. The second key position is really strong. It is just around the corner at that little building. From here you have a clear line of fire on the side of the enemy all the way to the buildings around the capture point A. The good thing is that the enemy has to focus on the possible threats in front of him while you can shoot on their side armor. The only disadvantage from this position is that you have no solid cover to your right side. But since this capture point is so unpopular, just be aware and check your right side from time to time. If you want to play it safe, you can also go to the left side of the building. From here you will have cover on the right side, but the angle and line of fire will not be as good as from the more exposed position. When your team has control over A and is on their way to the key position number 3, you also want to move onwards. The third key position for this route is either the capture point B or a position before it. You want to keep in mind that you are in control over C, and once your team has the capture point A, the only other spawn the enemy can use is the one closer to C. So when it is later in the match, there actually might be some enemies trying to get to B or A from the other spawn. Somehow players refuse to go the long way over the capture point C and only focus on B and A. For this reason, I did not consider the capture point B as a standalone route. It also is in the middle of the battlefield and can be attacked from both sides with ease. When we now have a look at all key positions from this side of the map, we see a proper front line for each phase of the match. We also can see that I recommend to approach B from the other two capture points. It is in the middle of the map, provides not much cover and can be attacked from both sides. The map is rather small and you don't want to overpush early in the match, so stay behind the highlighted line. Now let's have a look on the other side and start with the brawl route. When I have a down tier and a tank with some armor, I move to the capture point A. The first key position is at this corner. I didn't have a good match when I moved around this building and to this position. Most of the time the enemy was able to overrun my team at the capture point A and to get into my back. I have to prevent the enemy from doing so, and therefore I need to hold this position. Shoot the enemies in front of you at the capture point, and also have an eye at the little passage I talked about earlier in this video. Some enemies might push here early in the match. You can also have an eye to your right side and see if any enemy wants to sneak around that building. Wait until your support is in position and the capture point in front of you is clear before you move to your second key position for the brawl route. The second key position is the capture point itself. You have to cross a line of fire to get there, so you want to be careful and check your surroundings before you leave the cover. In addition, it is really important that your teammates on the support route are on their first key position before you push. If there are no teammates, you have to assume that there are enemies, so better wait and fight enemies that want to push your spawn early. If everything is safe, capture the point and fight enemies that try to get to A. Have an eye on that little passage that leads to the capture point B from the other spawn. The last key position for this brawl route is again just after the capture point. The third key position is already the position from which you have the control over one of the enemy's spawn points. Keep in mind that a team can get to this position within the first push. Use the buildings to cover your weaker side armor and have an eye on the area in front of you. In addition, check the minimap what your team is doing at the capture point B. The enemy might appear in your back from there. Don't overpush when it is early in the match. For the support routes from this side, the same rules apply like for the other side. There is a route for the rather squishy tanks and one for the supports with some armor. Of course, you can use the squishy route also with some armored support. It is just a recommendation. The first key position for the bluish route is one of the most important positions from this side of the map. From here you can and have to prevent the enemies from pushing around that building and getting in the back of your team. In addition, you can have an eye on the capture point B and push around the corner if it is safe to do so. Peek down that little passage and shoot on the enemies that brawl with your teammates. Your main goal is to secure that position and make sure that nobody gets in the back of your teammates. Oversee the capture point B and be aware of the position I showed earlier in this video around the capture point C. This is important before you move onwards to your second key position. When everything is clear and your team is capturing A, move a little further towards that building. From here you can peek around the corner and shoot on enemies that want to attack the capture point A or B. You can also move inside that building and use it as cover. Always check the minimap what is happening around the capture point B. The last key position for this route is just around the corner. This map is really small. Use the building as cover and lock down the enemy spawn that is closer to the capture point A. You can also stay at your former position if it is still early in the match or drop down to help at B. But be aware of the position around the capture point C that can oversee the whole area towards your position. But a support route with some armor use the other spawn and move directly towards the capture point C that is your first key position. You can check the small gap between the box wagons to see if an enemy is also on his way to the capture point C. But don't waste too much time doing so. Capture the point and fight enemies that might appear. For the second key position you use the same position as from the side of the enemy. Doing so you have the building as solid cover to your left side and can shoot on the enemies that try to push the capture point B or that want to move onwards at the capture point A. Club your support at the capture point A, and when they are on their second key position and B is secured you can move to your third key position. However, you always want to listen for hostile engine sounds at your second key position and keep in mind that you are in charge of this capture point. When it is later in the match you can move onwards and closer to the capture point B. Either try to capture it or go to a position around the capture point and defend it. Check the minimap if an enemy tries to clear and capture C again. When we now have a look at the key positions from this side of the map, we see a proper front line for each phase of the match. Abandoned Factory is a fast and small map and the capture point A can be crucial for the outcome of the match. However, you don't want to forget about the advantages that come with the capture point C. Since only a few players go there, the capture point is actually for free and you can oversee a huge area of the battlefield. I didn't consider a route for the capture point B because it is in the middle of the map. That doesn't mean that you can't go there. It is just not as safe as the other two capture points. I hope you like my tips for the map Abandoned Factory Domination. Like, subscribe and leave a comment if you want to, and check out my Discord server for more information and to connect with other players. Hope to see you in game soon.